today on Mother Mayhem.
Listen to yourself. This is such a personal choice, and you are not doing it wrong if you wait on it. You are not doing it wrong if you think it through. You are not doing it wrong if you go to contact, change your mind, and go back to no contact. You do not owe her an explanation. You're not doing it wrong if you offer her an explanation.
Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the narcissistic abuse recovery podcast for daughters. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and as I sit here, guys, I have no idea how last week's episode went down for all of you. Last week, you all listened in on a voicemail I had sent to Audrey about reactive abuse. I had never inserted a voicemail into a podcast episode before, and in all honesty, while you were all hearing last week's episode and this week's episode a week apart, I've actually been sitting here working on them back to back and recording them back to back. So if last week's episode was a total hot mess, welcome back to a back-to-back feature of hot messes, because I up and went and did it again. Like you heard me say last week, during the hiatus of the show, listeners were still writing in, and I got really self-conscious about when I was going to be able to get back to them. So I started leaving them voice notes in response to what they had shared, and it did end up occurring to me that I could always turn those voice messages into podcast episodes when I was up and running again and better on top of things, and I guess that time is now. So this week we're talking to Catherine. Catherine is actually my sister's middle name. Tracy is her first name. I'd always call her Trey for short. Growing up, my dad owned a Subway sandwich shop, and we would spend Saturdays working for him. And you might know this, they bake their own bread at Subway. So as an irritating big sister, I always enjoyed saying to my sister, "Hey, Trey, can you wash the trays?" Well, that got pretty irritating for her, so she started to insist that we all call her by her full name, Tracy Catherine. And if we didn't, she wouldn't acknowledge us. Little fucker had boundaries setting down pat before she was even 10 years old. It totally worked. She had us all calling her Tracy Catherine for quite a while. I also now call her Kid, and even though it's probably not her favorite thing to hear as a 43-year-old, she still lets me have that one. So, Kid, this one's for you. I love you. Catherine wrote to me before the holidays. Her story packs quite a punch, and in her original letter, she was looking for permission to go no contact, but upon further reflection, she's also asking about rediscovering herself and seeing herself through her own eyes and not just that of her mother's perspective. So here's how we're going to do this. First, I'm going to read you Catherine's letter. Then I'm going to have you all listen in on my initial response to her, just like I did last week. So hopefully that went okay. After that, I do want to add some of my own concluding thoughts that I didn't get to in my first response to Catherine. Let me first say, the things that I get to do on this show are really freaking cool sometimes. By helping Catherine 2 months ago, I am now able to help all of you listening too. I am so grateful and privileged to be leading all of you. It's never going to be something that I take lightly, and it is always going to be an honor and a privilege for me. You all and this work make my life so much more meaningful, and I am so ever grateful that all of you are here with me. So here's the story Catherine originally shared. It tugged at my heartstrings. It came with a side of tissues, so you might need your tissue box handy a little bit too. I've been listening to your podcast to try to find a way forward, and I want to thank you as it is already having a beneficial effect in so many ways. Listening to episode 9 has been a source of comfort, but also very unsettling for me. Amanda's story broke my heart, but also made me feel less alone. 20 years ago, when I tried to set some boundaries with my mom, I'm trying to write to you from the UK. She was on a smear campaign with my brother and his wife and my aunt. She told my brother and his wife that I hated them and went mad at the mention of their names. There is not even a grain of truth to it. This caused a 10-year silence between my brother and I, which was only broken when I asked my sister-in-law if I had done anything to upset them, and she told me what my mom had said. Although I told her there was no truth to it, my relationship with them is still quite fragile to this day. When I confronted my mom with what she had done, she threw my sister-in-law straight under the bus, and she said she was lying and was a stirrer. At the time she did this, she went straight on to a smear campaign to me, to my aunt, who has been rude and has subjected me to nasty comments ever since. Her behavior has followed this pattern ever since then. If I try to set boundaries with her, a smear campaign begins and the silent treatment follows. My mom has done and said many cruel and horrible things to me in my life, and I'm not sure how or why I've tolerated it, but I have. However, something came to light recently, and I have not been in contact with her now for 2 months. My son passed away age 17 nearly 7 years ago, and the wake was held at my parents' home. I spent the weekend with my friend of 35 years recently, and it came to light that my mom was really rude to her at the wake. A few of my friends had decided to come to my house after the wake, as I was a single mom and my son had been my only child, so they didn't want me to go home alone. My mother cornered her and said that she was encouraging me to have a party and it wasn't appropriate, and she made my friend feel really uncomfortable. Something inside me snapped that day. On the day I was saying goodbye to my son, she still had to make it about her. She offered me no emotional support when my son was in intensive care for a month or on the day he passed away. She simply phoned my doctor to come and deal with me. I'm struggling. I feel like I just want to cut her out of my life because she is so toxic. She knows I'm upset and why, but she will never reach out to me. So we are in another one of our standoffs. I just feel like I am so done, but I'm sad about it and I feel guilty and anxious all the time. I feel like I'm seeking permission and someone to tell me that I'm justified in my decision to cut her out of my life. I would be grateful for your thoughts. Once again, the podcast is really helping already. Oh, all right, Catherine, this one hurts. It just hurts. And I am so privileged that you shared this with me. Here's what I replied back to Catherine. And again, all of you should send thanks and maybe some oxygen to Clark for editing this so it can sound a little seamless for you. I promise you that isn't my doing.
Hi, it's Heather. I got your email last week and I had so hoped that I would be able to sit down and spend some time with you before the holiday rush, but alas, there are too many things that I had to sit down and focus on, and your email was so thoughtfully written that it really deserved my time and space to thoughtfully reply. As I'm sitting here, you're looking for permission to go no contact with your mom. I would encourage you simply to start by reading what you wrote to me and saying, I hit my breaking point when she used my son's death and made it about her. The fact that you have to survive the loss of your son and find a way to navigate that while also navigating your mother's abusive treatment is just really sad. And I'm so sorry that this is your story. Here's what I want you to pay attention to. In your email, you're in wise mind. You're like, she was really rude to my friend. My friend was trying to help me. My friend had my back. She was taking care of me. And then she went and just trashed my friend. All while I was recovering from the immediate effects of losing my son. So wise mind, which is that connection between what you know to be true and what you feel to be true, and where that meets is wise mind. Wise mind already knows that your mother has failed to mother you in epic fashion. Wise mind knows that there's no coming back from that. That once your mom makes a decision like that, you can't really dial it back. She can't really take it back. She can't really imply that she didn't mean that she didn't do it. And we also know that women like your your mom are largely wholly incapable of seeing their behaviors reflected back on them. So there's no part in this where you can say in any way, shape, or form, this is what you did, this is how your behaviors made me feel, this is what it makes me want to do in response, because your mother's never going to allow you to hold up that mirror. And again, I think your wise mind also knows that. And so what's happening for you is you're 3/4 of the way there to be able to listen to your truth and act on it. But where you're getting stuck is trauma brain. Trauma brain is saying, but what happens if it gets worse? What happens if she was going to turn a corner and she was going to be the mother you always needed her to be, and you just needed to stick it out for 1 second? What happens if I go no contact and she gets worse and makes my life even harder than it is? Your brain and trauma brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze because your mom has a history of escalating and creating chaos anytime there's change or perceived change. What I would encourage you to do in this moment is to lean into your wise mind. The wise mind that already knows that there's really nothing left here. Your mom hasn't left you any room to move forward. There's no way around this. There's no coming back from it, honestly. And so the challenge is to listen to wise mind by talking back to your trauma brain, by telling your trauma brain, of course it's scary. You don't see a lot of examples in your regular everyday of daughters who stop talking to your mother. Of course, this is a really big deal. Families don't break up for nothing. Of course, this is scary. Of course, you're doubting yourself. But listen, I've got you, and it's going to be okay. Because if you're going to have someone in your life, you need to have people in your life who respect and honor this tremendous loss that you're living with. So yes, it's scary to go no contact with mom, but yes, it's absolutely necessary. Now, I'm not saying that as Heather thinks this. I'm saying this because that's what you reflected for me in your email, that this is what you think and this is what you feel. This is what you believe. But you're tripping up a little bit and you're getting nervous and scared and taking action on it. And of course you would be nervous and scared to take action on it. You've never done anything like this before. Like you said, this is another round of me and my mom. We do this and we have these standoffs. And now what you're saying is, I actually think we might be in our last standoff and I'm not going to contact again. I would be listening to your voice. You have already given yourself permission. You are afraid, I think, to listen to that permission. And if you need an outside perspective who sees you and understands the battle you're in and knows how hard this decision is to validate that, I can tell you I 110% validate that decision. Absolutely go no contact if that's what feels true and real and most right for you. I hesitate in telling you outright just to do it because if you've heard me on the show, that's not my thing. I don't force people to go no contact. There's a lot of people and narcissistic abuse recovery work who do force that choice, who say the only way to do this and the right way to do this is to go no contact. But that's not what I think, and that's not what I believe. And so I really believe you have to be in this place where you are making this decision for yourself from this place of ownership and taking care of yourself and listening to yourself. And if your voice is still saying all of that for you, then I really, really do want you to listen to that and to pay attention to that and to take care of yourself through that. This would be the moment where I'd be like, and so how does that land with you? And what does that make you think or feel? And does that still feel true for you? I would listen to my reflection of what you said and see if my reflection of what you said feels like what you meant. And then I would encourage you to listen to yourself. This is such a personal choice, and you are not doing it wrong if you wait on it. You are not doing it wrong if you think it through. You are not doing it wrong if you go to contact, change your mind, and go back to no contact. You do not owe her an explanation. You're not doing it wrong if you offer her an explanation. What we want you to do is find the right answer that's true for you, that honors who you are, how you want to move through the world, and how you want to respect your own experience. You owe her nothing. This is about doing the thing that's right for you. Thank you so much for reaching out and sharing your story and sharing your experience. I have no idea what I really expected when I started this show. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for allowing me the privilege of getting to know your story, of holding it with you. I certainly honor your truth, honor your experience, and give you permission to meet yourself right where you're at today, wherever that might be, with permission to understand that it all may change tomorrow as well, that you get to find the right answer for you. You get to take the time to discover what the right answer is for you. But I'm so glad you found this show. I'm so glad you found us. I'm so glad that you're finding meaning here. Thank you so much for taking the time to share yourself and your story. Women around the world are in it with you. I most definitely am too.
Hi, it's Heather. I'm back. For real. So after I replied back to Catherine, this is what she had to say. Now, for reference, this was at the end of December 2023. So we know that life has moved on a little bit more for her since then, because now we're in March of 2024. But hopefully I can still offer some thoughts that have some value and meaning for her. Here's what she had to say. I'm still in a state of no contact with my mom, even though Christmas period, as my wise brain reflected that I wouldn't tolerate any other human being treating me the way that she has. So why would I have spent a lifetime letting her treat me in this way? Your voice note has reinforced this message for me. I still have a lot of work to do on myself and a lot of reconciling to do, but I am determined to change things for the better and hopefully rediscover myself through my own eyes instead of those of my mother's, if that makes any sense. Oh, Catherine, sweetie, of course you make sense to me. You make so much sense to me. Your mother has been deplorable. Sure, narcissistic, but also deplorable. She's been awful to you, and you have deserved none of it. But she has become a master at spinning tales and manipulating people. She operates at a level that is unconscionable. So of course you don't understand how she can say or do half of the shit that she has said or done. Who does any of that? What kind of person uses a grandson's death and weaponizes it? It makes me ill in my belly just to think about. Then when we think about all of the unnecessary drama that she's caused between you, your brother, your sister-in-law, your aunt, your friends, it becomes a really hard maze to navigate. And of course you find yourself questioning yourself and doubting yourself. After all, you know your truth. You can speak your truth, but how can you know who would believe you, or if anyone in your mother's orbit would ever believe you, because all of them have surely been manipulated by her. It's awful, and it is painful beyond measure, and I hate that this has happened to you. Here's where I think we need to attack this. We need to help you to break the habit of thinking about your mother, considering your mother, or reflecting on how she might be viewing something or what she might be saying about something. Now, as a kid, those were the very tools you needed to survive a childhood with her. You needed to know what she was thinking, how she was feeling, what her behavior was telling you, so you could see her coming from a mile away and then know what your response needed to be in anticipation of her. But now, my friend, that habit isn't serving you anymore. So the first thing we need to do is to bring trauma brain back to the table just for a second. Let's be nice to her. Let's get her really good and comfortable. Let's give her a seat of honor at the table. And let's thank her for absolutely everything she's done to protect you and keep you safe. Her laser focus on your mom protected you. Her instinct to back off and stop contact has also protected you. But now you have a couple of months of no contact behind you, and you don't need trauma brain as much anymore. You need your wise mind to come and sit with you. Here's what wise mind can tell you. Your mother put you through the fucking ringer, and on top of that, you lost your son. You are living with and have survived several traumas, and you are grieving the loss of your son and the loss of the relationships your mother tarnished with her vitriol. All of this is a lot to hold and carry. How do you start looking at life through your eyes? It's connected to a word that you used in your first email to me, permission. You give yourself permission to choose you first, permission to consider yourself, permission to get curious about yourself. Now, anytime I have this conversation with all of you, I always try to bring you back to episode 3, where I guide all of you on how to have better relationships with yourselves. This is always going to be the core work of narcissistic abuse recovery. And in that episode, I connect you with journal prompts for further reflection. I'm going to link to them again in the show notes for this episode, but these questions are really worth your careful time, consideration, and practice. And okay, ladies, get ready. I'm about to throw more questions at you to consider as you're working to better understand yourselves. And you know I like to make things as pragmatic, practical, and actionable as possible. If this were a perfect world, which it is not right now, I would be making you another journal companion guide for this episode that lists all of these new questions out for you. But alas, in all honesty and all transparency, I'm short on time. So I'm going to need to trust that you're going to pause this podcast now, grab a pen and paper, or open up your note-taking app on your phone and take some notes. So here goes. In addition to what I offer all of you in episode 3, there are other questions that you can reflect on as you're trying to better know yourselves and understand yourselves. As you go through your day and you consider your interactions you had, check in with yourself. How did you feel? Were you regulated in your body? Did you feel seen and respected? Did you feel safe? Walk yourself through that same thing as you consider your decision-making process for the day. It might be worth your time to create a daily check-in journal for yourself where you're able to quickly ask yourself these questions and jot your answers down each day. Did you feel good about your decisions? Did you feel good about your interactions? What did you need more of, less of? Where did it get hard? When it got hard, what might you have needed, or what might have made you feel more comfortable? What might you have needed to make something easier? Were there any boundaries you might have needed to set? When you look at the quality of your relationships, are you satisfied? Are there other toxic connections that might perhaps need to be toned down or removed in order to feel safer? When you are exposed to new ideas or approaches to things, I'd like you to really get curious with yourself about yourself. How do I feel about that? Does that feel true for me? What would feel more true? All of this is giving yourselves permission to get to know yourselves, permission to put yourself first, permission to get curious about yourself, while also being accepting that you might not know all of the answers to these questions about yourself, but you're starting to be willing to figure it out and find out for yourself. Then, Catherine, I would spend some special time considering the grief over the loss of your son. Are there any places where your mom interrupted that process for you? Might she have deviated the attention away from your grief and your experience and back to her? You might have gotten stuck somewhere in your grief that you now need to move on from. And I'm not sure about this last part. As you've heard me say on the show before, nothing sets a narcissist off like a wedding or a funeral. So she might have derailed what would have been a very personal process for you. And if there's anything you might need to go back to or revisit, I would really encourage you to do just that. One of the greatest losses that comes with trauma is the loss of self. In the psychobabble world, you'll often hear that development stops at the age of the trauma. And while I know that's true, I also do know that people have a way of living and relating in a world despite their trauma. And I want to also honor and recognize that. Let's just take a second and take a deep breath and breathe through this one, because thinking about this and complicated grief and grieving the loss of a child is so much. And I know that with my questions, I got super concrete and maybe I even got a little bit in the weeds, but I trust that you can follow the process I'm outlining in a way that better suits your style and how you're thinking about it. I just want you giving yourselves permission to get to know yourselves, to learn about what your needs are, what your boundaries are, what your goals are, and what your values are. Take your time, go easy, and when you find things about yourself that you really like, be sure to name them too. Getting clear on what you're bringing to the table and the value you offer is a part of narcissistic abuse recovery. It's not just about getting rid of the bad stuff. It's about finding the good stuff too. Getting to know yourselves is the ever-evolving work that we're doing here together. And I know I didn't cover all of it today. I promise you we're going to keep talking about it. You are in a community of women around the world who are in this with you, and I am too, always. Bye for now. I'm so grateful that you're here. You're right where you're supposed to be. At its heart, I'm hoping to use this show to build a community of women working together to heal from childhoods marked by maternal narcissism and emotional neglect. My goal for Mother Mayhem is that this show becomes an advice and mentoring-driven show where you share your questions, struggles, and stories, and I offer you direction for healing and recovery. That can't happen without your contributions. I invite you to send a recorded voice memo or write in an email with your questions and things you're struggling with. You can always find me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. To connect further, I invite you to find me over at Instagram and occasionally on TikTok at daughtersnpd. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, I'm going to ask that you share the show with her. You can help me get the word out with your reviews and social shares of the show, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing this show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks for your time today. I'm always in it with you. Bye for now.